What's up, everybody? Happy Monday, May 30th. A little Elvis return to
Tuesday,
sender.
Adam. We're in Tuesday.
Tuesday, you're right.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, May 30th with the holiday. So a little return to sender, as this call is going to focus around our RMA process and the returns coming in and the best ways to make sure that your returns and your RMAs are getting accepted, approved, and causes you guys less hassle. And we want to streamline this process and make it as smooth as possible. So for those of you that are on the call, thanks for joining. For those of you that are rewatching the call posted online, thanks for listening. We want to make sure you have some best practices when you are returning equipment. All right, with that said, you guys can hear me okay and you can see my screen, correct?
Loud and clear.
All right. So the basics, the RMA for phone listed defective is you go to www.dciorders.com, the same site where you guys can order business cards for your locations, where you order your phones, and where you're going to do your returns, right? And I just want to touch on that business card thing because I get asked that a lot. Hey, can you give me business cards? DCI is going to get you business cards whenever you guys need them. They are all up there on the DCIorders.com website. So just wanted to touch on that. But when you go to the DCIorders.com, you're going to click on support links, and then you're going to click on RMA requests. So this is a quick, easy way to get these returns in for your teams. Now, how to send an RMA for a phone that's defective. You're going to have to enter in the name of the employee submitting the request, the email address where they should respond it to, in your sales portal ID. What's very important is that valid email is the #1 error that we're seeing when submitting an RMA, because DCI is going to respond to that. So if you're not putting a correct email in there, you're not going to get your response. So super important. I mean, very basic, but we see a lot of errors on it. Some of the #1 errors we see. Make sure you're putting a valid email address in when you are submitting the RMA. It causes a lot of issues because if it's submitted with an incorrect email, and there's any issue and we reply to you, then you're not getting it, right? And that can cause your RMAs to get delayed, denied, whatever the case may be. If it's a personal email, that's fine. Just know the email will go to your personal email submitted. With every submission you guys put in for an RMA, you will receive an automated response that that our team got it. So as soon as you submit an RMA, you should get the RMA response. We received your RMA. If you don't see that, again, this is an instant response, there's a problem. So if you submit an RMA, let's say today at 1 p.m., and you don't have a reply back by 1:05 p.m., you might want to reach out to the office because there's an issue there where maybe there was an error in the email typed in, but you're not seeing that response because that response is automated. It's instantly as soon as you submit it. So very important, you guys are putting that correct email address in when you are submitting your RMAs. It doesn't matter if you're an employee, an owner, whoever's submitting it, it must be accurate. Another key pointer I want to make sure you guys are aware is that for RMA for a defective phone, the dealer issue is super, super important. So you'll have your Dropbox of issues, right? And I kind of copied and pasted the dealer issues on the screen here if you're online. If not, I'll read through them briefly. But if it's power, the phone won't power on or shuts down. If it's software, if it's freezing or resetting. If it's something with the screen, so nothing physical damage, but there's not a screen issue. If it's a microphone or speaker, if the new device is showing is previously activated, if it's an out-of-box failure, in other words, you can't activate it, or if there's no service or reception, or if the customer is not in a serviceable area, so that would be like for an Xfinity box you sold to someone who doesn't have Xfinity in their area, which shouldn't happen because Xfinity does address checks, but that's a category out there. Or there's an other, please explain, if it doesn't correspond to any of those issues. Now, why is this so important? This is what Boost uses to either approve or deny your RMA requests. So if you go in there and like, oh, I should send it in, I'm just going to pick whatever issue it is. I'm just going to pick something randomly off this list rather, and you're actually choosing the correct issue. this is causing you guys' RMAs to get denied and sent back to you, right? And no one wants that. There's a lot of money in these handsets, a lot of money held up. So it's super important you guys are choosing the correct reason when submitting these RMAs. This is not a pencil whip exercise. This is not something where you can put in a false email address, you can just select a reason, you should put the phone information and send it in. It doesn't work that way, guys. And we're seeing more and more of those kind of errors coming in, which is just not taking the time to do it correctly. But it's going to cost you money in the long run because you're not accurately submitting your RMA request, which everything you submit is checked before it gets approved for the RMA. So it has to be 100% accurate, guys. I can't stress that enough. Make sure that you guys are submitting the accurate reasons. Any questions on this before I go to the next slide? All right, no questions. So when you put your RMA in for the phone that's effective, you're going to agree to the terms and conditions, you're going to submit it, and then that'll be in. So let's go over those terms and conditions. Make sure you guys are fully aware of it. New Boost mobile handsets purchased from DCI are eligible for return based on the following criteria. So the return must be within 60 days of the retailer purchase and within 70 days of the customer, or 7 days of the customer activation. So let me clarify that. Whenever you buy a phone from DCI, this is why it's so important to practice FIFO, first in, first out, for your inventory, right? Because if that phone sits on your shelf for over 60 days and is not sold, it's not eligible for an RMA. So that's why you always want to be putting your oldest phones to the front of the pegs, so those are moved first. You have 60 days to sell those devices to a customer. Now, when you activate a phone, so let's say it's day 50, you bought the phone 59 days ago and you activated it. Well, then you're good to go for 7 days of that customer activation. So it can sit on your shelves for almost 60 days, or 60 days actually. But once it's activated, the customer only has 7 days to return that phone back to you. All right. So these are some key numbers. Again, use first in, first out for your inventory. Always move your oldest phones to the front. I know we get a lot of questions that, like when we have stuff shifting around and phones are going kind of end of life, it's like, oh, can we send these back? Well, no. If they're sitting on the shelf for over 60 days, you cannot ship those phones back to DCI at all. And it would have to actually be a legit reason to send it back. So it had to be a legit RMA. So it has to be, again, within 60 days. And that customer issue, the customer has 7 days from the time they activate it to the time they deactivate it in order to get that return qualified. For the next category, manufacturer's defect. There are devices that experience operational issues within the first days, like powering down, blank screen, etc. These devices will show up on the active Sprint network 7 days or less, or not Sprint network. I guess that should be Dish network now, right? Customers remorse. Those are, again, devices returned to the retailer and deactivated within 7 days from the activation. They'll show up on the Dish network for 7 days or less or more. Now, the handsets purchased from DCI are eligible for return. Again, we base on defective device, non-defective, not previously activated, not activated by you, could not activate defective device, or could not activate portal or other issues, a non-defective device. The new Boost mobile handsets purchased from DCI, again, can be sent in if they have that DOA out-of-the-box failure. And I'm going to go into more in depth on these reasons, right? So the DOA out-of-box failure is now an exception, not a category to choose, right? So previously, this would be a category to choose. Now it's going to come up as an exception, right? So this is an important distinction for you guys. This type of device cannot be activated due to manufacturer defect issues, preventing the device from being activated. These devices will not have any activation date on record. So, okay, so why is this an exception? Well, the phone's never going to show activated, right? Because out of the box immediately failed. So these will be qualified returns to DCI, but they will have to be submitted as an exception. So it's an important call out. We'll make sure you guys are aware of. And Ophelia, are you on with us right now?
Yes.
On the exception for DOA out-of-box failure, what are you seeing on the time frame for those?
Like a week. Usually we submit them every Friday, and then it takes up to a week for them to reply back.
Did you get that, Adam?
Hello,
Adam,
hello?
we lost you there. Can you hear us?
I can.
All right. Are you? You might be having some internet issues.
Yeah, let me try to stop sharing and resharing. All right, you guys have me back?
Yes, we do.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I can hear you. I don't know why you lost me there, but I got you guys back. Okay, very good. So let me make this slide bigger again. Okay, yeah. So as Ophelia was saying, it's 7 days on those exceptions. So if you have a DOA out-of-box failure, no, it may take quicker to get that response because she was mentioning Boost looks at these once a week, or Dish looks at these once a week, right? So these are now going to be an exception for you guys, and it'll take a little bit longer on those. It's also very important that the product must be returned complete without damage or abuse. All the items included in the original package must be returned. Xfinity prepaid kits are non-refundable. Those devices and exchanges may be approved within 30 days of the customer purchase date. Again, as we touched on before, kind of keep highlighting it because it's a very important reminder. Phones can only be returned within 60 days of the purchase from DCI and 7 days of the activation. Now, if you have a DOA out-of-box failure, it's going to take an extra week to get that response back, but I just want to make sure you guys are aware of the differences on those returns, and it's okay. If it takes a while to get the exception issued, you guys are fine. When you have a Boost Mobile product, you want to check the MSN lookup tool on the Boost Mobile sales portal to verify the eligibility based on the activation date. For Xfinity products, if you have no return or defective exchange only reason, you want to call the Xfinity dealer hotline and have Comcast send a replacement unit directly to the customer. You may swap out the device in store and request an RA with DCI if needed. Any questions on the Xfinity box returns? All right. If it's within the eligibility parameters, you can submit the return authorization request online via the DCI RA number. The request form, which can be found at DCIRMA.com to receive that RA number. Again, that RA request must be submitted within 14 days of the deactivation, but keep in mind you got 7 days after activation to return. Very important you choose the correct reason from the drop box. Don't just pick any reason, as we touched on the start of it. Don't BS the reason for the RMA, or you're at risk for future chargebacks as part of the no fraud initiative. So let's pause on this one, right? So Boost and Dish are big into no fraud, no excuses, no exceptions, right? So when you're doing the RMA, and I really focus on this at the start of the call, I just want to reiterate it, you have to choose the right reason. And if you're doing RMAs for faulty reasons, like you got a phone and you don't want it, so I'm just going to put an RMA on it right now, you are at risk for future chargebacks, so please don't do that. And it is your retailer's responsibility to ship the devices back to DCI in a timely manner. So we need to make sure once you get those approved, the return device must be received with the approved RA number within 14 days of approval. So once you get that email to the correct email address you entered in, and it says your RA is approved, you have 14 days to get that phone back to us at DCI. Units returned after the 14 days or without an RA number will be automatically shipped back to the retailer with a $20 device return fee, so make sure you don't do that. The retailer may not return any devices that have been abused by the retailer or the customer. So some examples of that abuse would be like if it's got physical damage, like a cracked screen or a worn or missing keypad, or missing or stripped screws, corroded or broken connectors, water damage, missing serial numbers or ineligible serial numbers, and unauthorized alteration or programming. Those are deemed abused and will not receive the credit. If the phone comes pre-activated, Dish can reset them, but if the dealers have activated the phone and they submit for this reason, it'll be denied, right? So important call out there. Ovi, can you touch a little more on that bullet point?
The resets.
All the resets?
Yes.
Yeah,
So if the phone comes pre-activated.
Hi, it's Teresa here.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi. But the thing is I was told that this Wednesday will be the last time to submit for resets. After that, it'll be exceptions.
Okay, very
So,
good, very good.
Yeah, so that's a change that just came on recently.
All right. And then lastly, go ahead, Robert.
I wasn't saying anything, but Alfie, did you want to add anything to that process?
No.
Okay.
Okay. And then also very important, do not ship the phone without an RMA or DCI will send it back to you with a $10 fee. Right? So, I mean, these are kind of the basics. We just want to make sure you guys are aware of what the team is seeing internally, and make sure we avoid any of these stuff so we get these approved for you and help your business run as smooth as possible. Some other common errors we're seeing and how you guys can avoid them. If you have pre-activated devices, a pro tip here, make sure you're putting the correct reason when submitting, as we've touched on multiple times, or we may not be able to help. We can try an exception on those, but it's not guaranteed. For guided sales flow, RMAs that are submitted, and you get a reply that says pending, that means it's being researched as a possible exception. Later, you're going to get an email with the actual RMA. So make sure you're checking your email, make sure your email is accurate. And if it says pending, that just means holds tight, Dish is looking into it and researching the issue. Also, there are times when the dealers may submit with a device mismatch. Make sure you use a device IMEI, not the box IMEI, because sometimes devices get moved around. If you're maybe taking on the box and do a software update, maybe they find a way in the wrong box. But make sure you use the device IMEI, not the box IMEI. They should match, but if they don't, the RMA is for the box you submitted, which causes issues. The RMA needs to be for the phone you submitted. Make sure you have that device IMEI. If it comes with a mismatch, like you open it up and the numbers are automatically not correct, you're going to have to write mismatch IMEI in the memos, because again, this is going to have to be an exception circumstance. It's very important you guys reply to the emails you get from DCI when more information is needed. If you don't, this is causing delays. And you can also just call the office if you want. If you get the email from it, you don't want to send an email, call the office. We got a great team there that's going to take care of you. We want to make this as easy as possible for you. The reason that RMAs are getting denied for the most part is because the devices are still active. So very important, ensure you are deactivating before sending those devices in. If you can't deactivate the device, contact the office and they will help you escalate. All right, so these are some very common errors. Any questions on any of these? All right, moving on then. Other common errors, as we talked about, the time frame for submitting RMAs is set in stone. Make sure you follow the rules. The phone has to be submitted within 7 days of the activation, or the phone has to be submitted for RMA within 7 days. Let me start over. The phone has to be submitted for RMA within 7 days of the activation. The phone has to be deactivated within 14 days of the activation. So if you submit it for an RMA within 7 days, but you didn't deactivate it right away, you got a little bit of leeway, but you only got 14 days total. So that should be done before you submit the RMA. If not, you got a little bit of leeway, but it has to be deactivated within 14 days of that activation. You can only RMA a phone within 60 days of the purchase from DCI. So that goes back to make sure you do first in, first out for your inventory. Once you submit an RMA You have to send to DCI and get approval. You only have 14 days to get that phone to DCI. In other words, once that RMA is approved, you got 14 days to get that phone in. If you get an email from the office requesting more information, for example, dealer say there's an error message about the activation, please screenshot it and send it in. This also happens a lot when a port gets stuck. This isn't something that would be on the RMA form, but if you were asked for more information, make sure you capture what you have so you can get it in. And sometimes when you choose customer remorse, it gets denied because Dish can't see the activation. So make sure that activation does truly go through so Dish can see that to approve it. Otherwise, it could be an exception. Some of the other top exception requests is if a phone is stuck in a port, stuck in port in request and showing reserved for a customer, this can take up to a week to get a response. This is where we talked with, I think it was Ophelia or Trace at the beginning. The Dish only works on those once per week. So make sure that you are checking your emails, make sure you're responding to any issues, and know the exceptions may take an extra week. If it's a DOA request that will not generate an RMA, it's going to be an exception. So again, that's going to take probably an extra week. If it's an activation done on legacy, this may come back where it couldn't be verified the activation. So the back office team will have to submit an exception for that one as well. Once those RMAs are expired, there's nothing DCI can do. So make sure you stay in touch with us and our office team for any information to make sure we get these processed for you. Because I know there's a lot of money out in phones. And when you guys submit these RMAs, you want to make sure they are taken care of. And you guys are recouped for any losses, as well as getting those new devices to your customers. The RMA reproved returns is our office, DCI RMA, 4200 West Victoria Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60646. And with that, I will open it up. Are there any questions out there about the RMA process? Or anything we have not covered?
Hey, Adam, what's the process right now for someone sending incorrect device? You mentioned earlier that if there is any mismatch on the IMEIs, let's say a dealer returns the phone that doesn't match with the box, how the process looks like right now on the DCI end?
Well, they need to use the physical device, not the actual box, and that will have to be an exception. Was that correct, Teresa?
What's the best approach for the dealer? The dealer gets a response from DCI.
They have
that,
to, yeah, they have to write it in the memos. So they'll have to write mismatch IMEI in the memos because this is an exception. So if they have that, they need to write that mismatch.
No, but I was thinking after the fact. I was thinking about device already returned to us, and the RMA department opens up and discovers that the phone is different from what was submitted. What's the process there?
Ophelia, Teresa, can you advise on that one?
Sure. So we had an example this morning of Ophi got an RE approval from Dish and an exception, but it was on the box. When John received it in returns, the device on the inside was different. So he lets us know what he has. I research it, and then I try to do it on the device using the same reason that they use for the box if it's the same dealer. And I'll try to get an RA that way, or it'll be another exception request if I can't get an RA number.
But that delays also the time.
But you're taking the proactive approach and you submit on the dealer's behalf a new RA request.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we do double work pretty much.
Exactly, because by that point, Ophi's requested the exception. Dish has looked at it and has spent time trying to research, and we get an RA approval, but it's on the box. So it's very important that they try to do it on the device.
Okay,
Very good.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions out there about any circumstances or anything you guys might run into in the field? All right. Well, thanks guys so much for hopping on. Hopefully you had a great Memorial Day holiday. We appreciate your time and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you so much.